Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, live across the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning to you. It is the Michael Dukes Show, and it is the Monday edition, the fun day edition of the program after, I would say a relatively nice weekend. Although it was a little rainy yesterday, still overall very, very nice. And I'm rating that one probably a B minus, probably a B minus for us for a summer weekend. Nice and warm on Friday afternoon, nice on Saturday, and a little bit cool, not cooler. It was funny because I had to run down to the store and get a cucumber yesterday. Of all things, my wife was making potato salad, and the cucumber we had in the fridge was very sad. Anyway, I was walking around thinking, wow, it's a little cloudy and a little muggy, but it's warm. It was kind of weird. But overall, I would say a great weekend for another summer day. Here we are. I mean, we're 10 weeks from snow, 9 weeks from snow, maybe. And still a nice day. Fingers crossed. The first time, I've told this story before, but the first time that we got down here into the South Central area after moving from the interior, it was shocking because my kids, it was Halloween and there still hadn't been any snow. And my kids were freaked out a little bit. They're like, this is weird, Dad. I don't have to. Anyway, maybe it'll be another one of those. I don't know. It'd be the one benefit, I guess, of global warming that we're seeing. I mean, it was 127 degrees or something in Phoenix and down in Texas. And so we could have a warm fall or something along those lines. We'll see. Anyway, it's Monday, and we have got a slew of headlines to talk about here in hour one, things to discuss and debate, and we'll see what comes of that. But in hour two, we're going to be joined by Julie Coulombe, who is the representative from Anchorage, and she is going to pick up a discussion that we started last week. I had somebody reach out to me and said that Julie is very versed in the topic, and that is the topic of mental health matters in the United States, but more specifically here in Alaska. We talked about some of the issues related to mental health. I think we got into the discussion about the healthcare system and how, when a lot of that was deconstructed by the Reagan administration, that some states had plans in place, some states didn't have plans in place, and there's some real ramifications to what's going on. Because we've seen, we see some of the darndest things. We talked about the gentleman who stabbed the woman at the Lusac Library randomly here. Was it 2 years ago now, I guess? Just out of the blue, how that man had been in and out of police custody, and he had been charged with attacking other women, and but he was obviously mentally unfit. At one point, they decided mentally unfit to stand charges. And, we talked about the homelessness issue and the component of mental health in that. And then we see things like there was a standoff in Wasilla this weekend, where a woman stripped naked in the parking lot and was trying to attack people. And I mean, it was just wild and crazy, just a wild and crazy time all across the area. Same thing has happened in Anchorage a couple times, some of the incidents down there as well. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the state of mental health in the state and how does it actually work? What actually happens? We'll talk about the Mental Health Trust because somebody called up and was discussing that. What is the what is the status of that? And how do we raise money from what's going on there? And it should be an interesting and wide-ranging discussion in hour two with Representative Julie Coulombe, who is going to come on board and talk with us about this stuff. Meanwhile, headlines. Who's got your headlines? That would be me. Want to welcome you to it. This Friday. So housekeeping. It's my birthday coming up this next week. I'm doing a little bit of extra and early, and so I'm going to be off the air on Friday. I will be maxing and relaxing, sipping a tequila somewhere in that's. Sorry, I was quoting a song. I'll be hanging out and enjoying a little bit of downtime for my birthday, and that's going to be, which is next week. My birthday is actually next week, but I'm going to be working on those days. But I've decided to get a little time in, and so it's going to be a 3-day weekend this week for me, and a 4-day work week, which is that's the only thing better than a 3-day weekend is the 4-day work week. So just an FYI, you'll be listening to alternate programming on Friday, and which means that on Thursday, Firearms Thursday. That's what's happening on Thursday. Will be a combination of regular stories and a little bit of Firearms Thursday, just because I need to get it all out and get going on. All right. What was the thing? Thank you very much. Daniel said I had to restart the live stream. There we go. Live stream, by the way, is available for the audio only live stream. Is available over at michaeldukeshow.com if you want to click on over there and jump in on that. Let's go. Okay. Boy, lots of chat in the chat room this morning. People asking questions that I'm not ready to answer. What's the word on the pistol brace rule, says Greg. I don't know yet, Greg. Still watching to see what's going on. And I will let you know as soon as we hear. Maybe by Thursday we'll have some news on that and we can dive into it and see what's going on. Well, some crazy things happened on the way to the fair. This weekend in Juneau, they had a massive release of glacial water from a geological feature called Suicide Basin. And what happens is the Suicide Basin is an area right near Mendenhall Glacier where the glacial floods, the floodwaters of the glacier, fill up, and then have these sudden releases. And Suicide Basin has released water that caused floodings along the Mendenhall Lake and the Mendenhall River. That's been going on since 2011. But they had a tremendous release over the weekend on Saturday night. And that level of flood stage was the highest ever recorded since exceeded the previous record set in 2016, July of 2016. They had a massive release there as well. This stuff though, ooh baby. If you haven't seen this, there was a house right on the edge of the river. There's several different videos going around, including one where it shows these massive spruce trees just toppling into the river, one right after another. And then there is a series of houses and condominiums over on Riverside Drive in Juneau. And they've got a video from across the river watching this as it happens. And the river just rips through the banks. You can see that there's, 10, 12 feet of house hanging out over the edge of this bank now because the bank has been eroded away. And this $700,000 house just topples, right? Just gets sucked right into the river and away she goes. It's a crazy, crazy video and just shows you the power of Mother Nature. They have now lost 2 buildings and they've condemned the condominium complex that was right next door to this house. And no word yet on how they're going to try and make it safe or whatever. It's unusual for it to get as high as it did. But that flood water has the glacial dammed lake released dammed, not it's like a deep beaver dam, not the other kind. It was not cursed. It was just a glacial dammed lake release occurred there into Mendenhall Lake and River. And they said one of the comments from somebody who lived there was that it was 4 times as wide as he had ever seen it since he lived there. 4 times. Could you imagine? You could see the river from your house, but it's not too close. The next thing you know, the river's under your house. I mean, just more proof positive that Alaska is always out here trying to kill you one way or the other. But lots of major flooding down there. And again, there's a lot of what did the person call? I was reading the article. The person who posted it on Facebook called it let me see, because it's in the post to Twitter and or X or whatever we're calling it these days. They called it a specific name. It was like a Scandinavian name for, I don't see it there. Okay. Anyway, I was just curious as to what, here it is. A record Hjokullaup flooding. Hjokullaup. I don't know what that means, but it is interesting. Anyway, so hopefully those folks had overbought insurance, and it was all good, because you watch this thing go into the river and you're just like, I don't know what that is. Oh, the Coulombe is literally glacial outburst flood. Is a type of glacial outburst flood. It's an Icelandic term, but basically just boom, Joe Coulombe. You learn something new every day. That's a word that I'll try and work into my vocabulary this week, just in case. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We will return in just a mo. Don't go anywhere. More headlines and discussion. What's going on in Anchorage and the rest of the state with employment. We'll talk about the flotilla of Chinese and Russian warships that are apparently just off the Aleutian Islands, and more. It'll all be here. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All righty. Good morning, my friends. Good morning. Thank you, Daniel, for the... Daniel was the one that told me the live stream was off, and he says, thank you. Now I can hit the road to work. Thank you for letting me know on that. Anthony. Yeah, that's just cheating, getting naked and attacking folks. Nobody's tried to get hobo giblets rubbing all over them trying to wrestle in the parking lot. Hard pass. I mean, it was crazy, some of the stuff that's happened in the last couple of days. And then there was... I couldn't find I read the story last night as I was laying in bed getting ready to go to sleep. And apparently there was an armed standoff at the Fort Wainwright gate. Somebody tried to drive through without going through, and the picture is a woman in a nice flowered sundress with sunglasses with her hands up, being surrounded by police, all pointing guns at her. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I mean, it just seems like the crazy is real. The crazy is real. That's what's going on. Am I being detained? This is Brian. Good morning. Am I being detained? Is that, I mean, no, you're not. You're free to leave, free to go. Not mentally fit to live among society either, but they let them go anyway. Yeah, that's exactly it. People are just crazy. Terry says she wishes she could take her birthday off. Well, Terry, you know what? It's one of those things when you are your own boss. You're also the worst taskmaster in the world, but then occasionally you can decide to do something nice for your employee and let them take their birthday off. But I'm actually going to be working on my birthday because my birthday's on a Wednesday. Nothing worse than a birthday on a Wednesday. Give me a birthday on a Friday or a Monday. You know what I mean? That would be, because I don't need a birthday on the weekend, because then that just takes up a weekend day that I would rather have it on like a Friday or a Monday so I can have a 3-day weekend. Anyway, it's just one of those things. Good morning. Virgo, Juneau metaphors. Swamp Castle. Donna just dropped I can't follow the link, but you go check. You go check it out. Yeah. Yeah, it's right, Terry. I will write you a note that you can have your birthday off if you'd like me to write you a note. Yeah. Oh, it's a hookalout. It's the Viking word for my house needs an outboard motor. You guys are full of P&V this morning. I don't know what's going on. There's a highly controversial ordinance going through the Planning Commission on Tuesday, said Barbara. I don't know what it is. The gals at Fort Wainwright stood up a judge for a date, and it wasn't a Tinder date, says Barbara. Okay. I don't know. I couldn't get the story on what was happening. I couldn't get the story on what was going on there. Nobody in the comment section of the things really needed to know. But I mean, this gal standing there basically in a big flowered dress. I mean, she's dressed to the nines. You know, I mean, not like evening wear, but, you know, she looks really nice. And she's sitting there with sunglasses and her hands up, and the cops are all pointing at her. I don't know what was going on. Something. Anyway, it just seems like crazy is a feature that we're seeing a lot more of these days. It's interesting to watch, that's for sure. Okay. Where do I want to start? I guess we'll go. We did the flooding thing. We'll come back. We'll come back around to. This is where I want to go. There we go. We're going to talk about the flotilla. That's what we'll talk about. All right. If you guys are all ready, like and share, like and follow, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube-y stuff. Let's get to it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. All right, welcome back to the program. This Monday edition, boy, I could see some blue sky out there. It's going to be I have a feeling it's going to be a very nice day today. In fact, I'm just going to tell you, you're going to have a great day today. I'm speaking it into existence for you. I know it's Monday. I know you're groggy, but it's going to be a great day. I mean, think of the alternative, right? Like my grandfather used to say, any day above ground is a good day. Today's going to be a great day for you. All right, let's get into another story here that was first reported in the Wall Street Journal, that there were 11 Chinese and Russian warships spotted off the coast of Alaska, not far from the Aleutian Islands. It is the largest such flotilla to approach American shores in, well, recent memory, I guess you would say. maybe since the Revolution. I don't know. And although the ships never entered U.S. territorial waters, they were shadowed by 4 U.S. destroyers and a P-8 Poseidon aircraft to keep an eye on them. It's a historical first. Brett Sadler is quoted, a senior research fellow for the Heritage Foundation and a retired Navy captain, told the Wall Street Journal. He said, given the context of the war in Ukraine and the tensions around Taiwan, the move is highly provocative. Now, this is just grist for the mill for Senator Dan Sullivan, who is a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee and a longtime advocate of upgrading Alaska's military presence because of our geographic location. The fact that we're right here next to Russia. You know, we've got they're building all the icebreakers and they're building all these ports in the in the subarctic, and the fact that China is a stone's throw. I can see China from my house, kind of thing. He had lots to say about this. He said the incursion by 11 Chinese and Russian warships operating together off the coast of Alaska is yet another reminder that we've entered a new era of authoritarian aggression led by the dictators in Beijing and Moscow. In recognition of this reality and our state's unrivaled strategic location for years, I've been pressing the Navy and each successive administration to commit to greater naval, Coast Guard, and Marine Corps presence in Alaska, more Arctic-capable vessels, and more infrastructure to host these assets, like a deep water port in Nome. He reminded folks that last summer the Chinese and Russian navies conducted a similar operation off the coast of Alaska, and then President Biden's response was, well, he said it was weak. Senator Murkowski also issued a statement, said, we have been in close contact with the leadership from Alaska Command for several days now and received detailed classified briefings about the foreign vessels that are transiting U.S. waters. It's very troubling when two of the most autocratic or authoritarian regimes in the world join forces, and that we here in Alaska are kind of at the tip of the spear on this deal. We're the ones that are sticking way out here on the pointy end. And so if they decide to make some kind of statement militarily, it would be we're a quick hop, skip, and a jump across the ocean to do stuff like that. It is a little concerning, but I'm not going to try and lose any sleep over it. Again, the posturing is about, for Russia at this point, the posturing's about all they can do. I mean, they have got their absolute hands full. I don't know if you've been seeing the Ukrainian war stuff has kind of fallen off the radar for most people. But I was reading last week about some of the new offensives and things that were going on. And the Russians are getting their asses handed to them in so many different areas. They overextended. They've had to pull back from several locations because their supply chains are too thin and they don't have the manpower. And I mean, you just go through this stuff and it's pretty crazy what's going on, which on one hand is a good thing. But on the other hand, if you continue to back people into a corner, sometimes crazy stuff happens. And I don't like to see that. But Russia, I'm not too worried about Russian warships. The Chinese, that's a whole nother thing. But the fact that they're out there working together is enough to raise the hairs in the back of my neck a little bit. But it could just be, as they said, they did the same thing last summer. So it could just be another annual thing that they were committed to, and we'll see where it goes from. We'll see where it goes from there, I guess. I'll talk about it. I wasn't going to talk about this, but Must Read had a story up, speaking of China, talking about Energy Secretary Granholm. And it's Jennifer Granholm. She's the Energy Secretary, and she was part of the decision-making process on releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in late 2021. Well, according to Americans for Public Trust, and reported first on Fox News Digital, there were a series of meetings between Granholm and a senior Chinese official, with a senior figure within the Chinese Communist Party, that were held in November 19th and 21st of 2021. Only 2 days after that second conversation, the Biden administration made an announcement to tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and release 50 million barrels of oil. That is the largest withdrawal from the reserve in U.S. history. Which, funny how we didn't really get a whole lot of commentary on that. I mean, I remember it being mentioned in passing, but not the amount, and not that it was the largest one ever. And anyway, last year, the Washington Free Beacon focused on 1 million barrels of the reserve's oil that was sold to Unipec America, which is a subsidiary of Sinopec, the Chinese oil company. This organization has a connection to Hunter Biden, who was part of BHR, an investment company that had a stake in a Sinopec subsidiary. And so now there's this whole web of questions about whether or not the Biden administration was improperly influenced by the Chinese official, in part to be able to sell oil to a Chinese subsidiary. It's a web of lies and weirdness. And I mean, Senator Granholm's multiple closed-door meetings with the CCP-connected energy official raises serious questions about the level of Chinese influence on the Biden administration's energy agenda, wrote the executive director of Americans for Public Trust. They have questions about this. And I would agree that I have questions about this. But here we are. Maybe they'll have another UFO hearing to distract us from everything else that's going. That was the big thing that was going on, right? Oh yeah, now we all know that there's UFOs. Okay, well that was a nothing burger. Back to Hunter Biden. What's going on with him? It was just a distraction. The whole thing was just a distraction. You weren't paying attention to it. If you're not paying attention, that's, oh man, so crazy. I want to know what's going on with the Dunleavy administration. I want to know what's going on with, they've had a bunch of dismissals. They've let people go, the forced resignations. All these different things have been happening. And I don't necessarily know for what reason. And the thing is, the administration is not necessarily being clear on exactly what's going on. Now, I heard about this in passing last week. We didn't really talk about this, but I heard about this in passing. Nat Hers over at the Northern Journal. He writes for a bunch of different, Alaska Public. He writes for the Beacon, Northern Journal, everything else. Anyway, he's writing about this story. So top energy officials, Curtis Thayer. Let me just write this down here. Curtis Thayer, who is the Alaska Energy Authority Executive Director, complained about an opinion piece that was written by his co-leader on the state task force 2 days before Governor Mike Dunleavy removed the co-leader from the panel. So Thayer is the head of the Alaska Energy Authority, and he wrote a letter to Gwen Holdman, who was his co-founding director for the Alaska Center for Energy and Power, and who were originally vice chairs of the task force, the Energy Security Task Force, which Dunleavy had charged with reducing the cost of electricity in the state. He wrote to Gwen Holdman saying that he was disappointed that she'd written a series of energy-focused opinion pieces without sharing them in advance with apparently with him. I didn't know that necessarily you needed to. I mean, maybe it's nice to share with people if you have an opinion that you want to, but did he have to get them approved? Did she have to get them approved from him? What's interesting is that Holdman has been writing about, she's been exploring different options for modernizing Alaska's electrical grid without specifically endorsing options. But in her piece, she's known for her research into the potential of nuclear microreactors in Alaska. That's where that's where her known area of focus on research is. Meanwhile, Curtis Thayer has worked closely with the state's urban utilities, which are deeply dependent on natural gas. So the way the article is written, it makes it sound like maybe, just maybe, there's a bit of give and take here, and there's a bit of territorialism between the two different types of energy. And maybe because she put out this opinion piece without really talking about, or getting Thayer's, I guess, approval or cooperation or whatever else, that now she's like, oh, it's all, I'm wondering, is this kind of just a peeing match between the two different types of we here in Alaska All we care about is that we get the most reasonably affordable and, as clean energy as we possibly can. I think that if you talk to most Alaskans, that's what they're looking for. Micronuclear can deliver that. And as much as I like natural gas, don't get me wrong, if micronuclear can do the same thing, only do it better in the long run, more affordable, then I'm all about that. Look at what's happening down in the Cook Inlet right now. They're starting to run out of gas, and they don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years for gas in the inlet. I mean, we might be in the same boat that Fairbanks in, where we got to start, doing heating oil instead of natural gas. I mean, we don't know. So I'm just curious as to what's going on. But the Dunleavy administration has just arbitrarily removed people, and this is the gal who was the tax gal in the DNR, the Department of Revenue, and we're seeing these people just drop around, and there's no reasoning given. Not that they have to give a reasoning, but it starts to make you ask questions like, what's going on? Who's actually running the show over there, and who's calling these shots for all these people to be kicked out? It's a question that I have. I want to know what's going on. And finally, those of you who are up in Fairbanks probably recognize the name Pete Kelly. Pete Kelly is the former Senate president in 2018 who lost his re-election bid in the Senate. He's running again, but this time not for the legislature. He has recently filed to run for the IGU, the Interior Gas Utility, which is Fairbanks' borough-owned natural gas corporation. He's going to face a couple other candidates, but he'll be seeing him on his ballots, on your ballot again here, not too far from here. So keep a watchful eye out there. All right, we got to continue on the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back for more in just a moment. Julie Coulombe will be joining us in hour 2 to talk about mental health in Alaska. And we'll continue that discussion here in just a bit. Don't go anywhere. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Good morning, my friends. Smoky in Fairbanks, somebody said. Good morning. Well, I'm going through the, wonder if she took the jab. What about the hobo guy in the parking lot? What about the gal that apparently is standing down by the Vitus station in, was it Kenai or Homer? I can't remember which. I was reading some social media yesterday, which I normally don't do, but apparently somebody's just been standing there all day. The troopers have been called. Just a weird behavior. Is it sunspots? I don't know. You emailed me the ordinance last night. I'll have to read it, Barbara. Hey, how's your YouTube thing going, MD? Not too bad. I mean, YouTube is happening. There's let's see, how many people are on YouTube? About 15 people on YouTube right now watching us, roughly, I think. It's going. It's not like I'm going to quit my day job tomorrow, but we'll see. It's a good thing. Smoky in Fairbanks. Okay, Smoky Day. They did not repair. We desperately need rain here in Fairbanks, says Jim. cabins and houses threatened. It's pretty rough out there, huh? Every day above ground is a good thing, is a good day. Unless you fell out of an airplane, then being above ground is a bad thing. Well, yeah, true. But still be matter in the ground after you fall out of the airplane, because you will be in the ground at that point. All right. Let's see. Morning. But we have naked hobos. Okay. Chinese army invades. Alaska deploys the naked hobo battalion. Wins the war. You might want to do that. Just throw those guys out on the front line. That's the thing. They're testing our response, says Donna Anthony. They're testing our response. Their 11 ships to our 4 and our response time. Yeah. Harold is the only one talking about Trump and this thing. Like, everybody else is engaged and he's like having a conversation with himself. I don't understand. I don't even care about the indictment, quite honestly. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, as far as I'm concerned. But I suppose we can take solace that nobody's going to nuke Alaska, says Anthony. We're sitting on enough oil and minerals virtually untouched that they would in all likelihood ground occupy us. And I do enjoy a good General Tso's chicken. So that would be an interesting thing. Yep. Bring it on. Ground occupy us. See how that works out for you. Yeah. Good find, says Brian to Donna Ardwin, although I don't know what it was because I can't see the connector. Has the government made a statement about the incident? We need to continue to build Alaska's defense force, Alaskans protecting Alaskans. No, I hadn't heard anything about that. I barely heard a mention about it to, when it happened. That's great. That's great. There were a lot of good drugs at Salmon Fest this weekend, just saying. I did see that there was like a litany of people being picked up at Salmon Fest. The one guy who had, what did he have? He had cocaine, he had meth, he had psilocybin mushrooms, he had some other LSD, and then this guy had like $50,000 worth of drugs on him, and he got busted. And he was out on parole. That was the best part. Well, criminals, they're just going to break the law. So, yeah, apparently Salmon Fest was like, woohoo, out there. Haystack subdivision evacuated. Yeah. Shrooms, Percocet, I don't. They said he had psilocybin mushrooms and cocaine and some kind of synthetic drug, white, they don't know if it was ketamine or whatever, LSD, meth. It had meth, too. You can't forget meth. No daily, can't get your daily allowance of whatever. And he was out on parole. I just that was perfect. That's the perfect example of what's going on. I just don't think that rehabilitation thing is working out for you. I just don't think it's working quite like you thought. He's not as rehabilitated as he's possibly could have been. It's so many crazy things happening. I'm glad I didn't go to Homer this last weekend. Let's put it that way. Let's just put it that way. Not the place to be with all that stuff. All right. Good morning. Good morning, Sue. How are you? We got more coming. Let's jump into it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Julie Coulombe will be up with us at the top of the hour. Let's do it. Yeah, they had quite a party down at Salmon Fest down there over the weekend. I mean, I kept reading the police blotter that kept being posted up in, I don't know, one of the community Facebook groups. They got the guy down there that the police contacted after it had been reported at Salmon Fest that he was out there selling shrooms at Salmon Fest. So they went back to his tent and they found, well, first of all, they arrested him and he had shrooms and cocaine on his person. They went back to his tent and they found cocaine, more cocaine. They found more shrooms. They found meth. They found a white powdery substance that they assume is fentanyl and a bunch of LSD. This guy was having a party all by himself, and he was out on parole. He didn't have how did they put it? He didn't have a pass from Anchorage. He didn't have an approval pass, meaning he left Anchorage without permission because he was on parole. You're supposed to get permission before you go anywhere. And it apparently was a party down where he was at in Homer. There was some crazy, crazy stuff going on. It makes me kind of glad that I didn't go down. I was thinking about going down to Homer last weekend for Salmon Fest, and I was like, no, I got a lot of stuff. I'll just stay. I'm kind of glad I did at this point. But he came from Anchorage, so you can't necessarily blame Homer, right? He came from Anchorage. But stupid is as stupid does. Guys out on parole they said it was $50,000 worth of drugs. First of all, how do you get out of jail, be on parole, and go get $50,000 worth of drugs? Right? I mean, and I don't even know at this thing. Anyway, it was an interesting weekend. Let's just put it that way. Between the fact that the gal got stopped at the front gate of Fort Wainwright and got the armed guards and the whole armed standoff there, up here at Wasilla, at the Fred Meyer parking lot in Wasilla, a naked woman got chased around. It took 6 police officers to basically get her to stop. She was like running around attacking people and all kind of crazy. The shooting down at the Fred Meyers in Anchorage, I mean, I think it's either the lack of the sun or it's too much sun. I don't know which one it is, but it's something, it's something. But I will say this all kind of leads into our next segment where we're going to talk with Julie Coulombe about the state of mental health care here in the state of Alaska, because it's pretty obvious that we've got some issues, not just here in Alaska, but around the country. We've got some definite issues on some of this stuff. And, it should be a good discussion as we go through. One of the interesting, there's a couple different interesting stories, and I'm not going to get too far into this one other than there was a brand new tech breakthrough in geothermal power. I don't know if you saw this article in the Beacon, but there has been there's been a breakthrough in some of this energy technology, the drilling technology of being able to use geothermal. Geothermal basically allows you to pump hot water into the ground or pump water into the ground where there are hot spots. It heats it, it brings the water up, and then they release it, which turns it to steam, which turns a generator, and then they condenses again, and then the cooling tower, and then the water goes back, and it's a cycle. It's a circle of life, right? You know what I'm talking about? And it's a way to produce. Small scale geothermal power has been around for a long time, small scale, but now it's finally starting to be an opportunity for large scale stuff. And it's some of the cleanest power you can get once you get it all built and everything else. Last month, the company announced a successful demonstration in the West of a new drilling technique that it says will greatly expand where geothermal plants can be built. They're talking about wanting it to be part of a larger piece of the grid where there will be whole grids of geothermal power vents and things like that. They said geothermal currently provides less than 0.5% of the nation's electricity, but those who support it believe that advances in technology will enable it to push it as much as 20% of the U.S. power grid. I remember talking about geothermal heat loops and geothermal generation systems 25 or 30 years ago. There was a guy out in North Pole geothermal to heat for power. He was using it for heat, and it worked well. That was, again, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. That's when it was in its kind of its infancy up there in the interior. And now things are totally changing, where they're going to build whole networks of this stuff. I mean, it could be, again, some of the cleanest power out there. In conjunction with that, and there's a whole article on this, by the way, again, in the Alaska Beacon. I'll drop a link onto this into the chat room so folks can go take a look at it. But that the breakthrough could have long-lasting effects. Let's just put it that way, where geothermal could be used as a major source of power. And in a related story, the Alaska Division of Oil and Gas plans for a geothermal lease sale for a volcano about 80 miles north of, or about 80 miles from Anchorage, of Mount Spur. They are going to be leasing areas of land for exploration for geothermal to be pumped apparently somewhere else. The decision was announced July 28th by Director Derek Nottingham. The Alaska Division of Oil and Gas is preparing to hold a lease sale offering rights to explore for geothermal energy resources on Mount Spur. It comes 2 years after the division issued non-competitive bids to two companies to explore geothermal energy resources on specific parcels. If the division follows through, this would be the fourth competitive lease sale held for Mount Spur geothermal resources after sales in 83, 86, and 2008. Most of these have not really led to much, but with some of the new technologies coming online, there are reasons to believe that the leasing this time will produce more results. There's a lot more federal monies in there. They've got some federal incentives because of the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. And there's companies now that have a little bit more technology behind them than what they've done in the past. Geo Alaska is one of the companies that's working on this stuff. And he said that the president of that company said that they're working to see what they can bring to the table. They're also using data from one of the previous companies as well that was there and kind of eventually laid off. But yeah, I think this is kind of there's a unique opportunity here. They got all the leases. They got this brand new tech breakthrough on how to use geothermal in the long way. I think it could be, and we are so geologically active here in the state, it would be a perfect opportunity to tap into that. And, don't have a lot of solar time in parts of Alaska because of the lack of sunlight, but you may always have geothermal time. Maybe that's what they should be putting up now instead of a lot of these, especially if in some of the villages, if there's a way so they don't have to haul fuel up there to generate power and all that. Maybe it's another way they can create a geothermal generator and they don't have to haul heating oil or fuel oil across, up barges and through rivers and across tundra and everything else. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. I'd like to see what it's all about. All right. We're coming up on the break. We got more. Julie Coulombe is going to be joining us in hour 2. We're going to be talking with her about the state of mental health care in Alaska and probably around the country. I'm sure that'll come into the equation as well. We will continue the Monday edition of The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this. Don't forget to come check us out on Facebook, by the way. Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. We'll return with more right after this. Oh, man, there's a red flag warning, says Jim. Red flag warning for more lightning strikes up in the interior this afternoon. That's all you need. All right. I see that Julie is partially into the green room here. I got a little signal from her, but no video yet, so we'll get to her in just a minute. Let me go back through some of the. Go back through some of the comments here real quick to make sure I got everything that's going on. Susie said my dad was talking about it in the 70s. I'm assuming she means geothermal. Yeah, I mean, the technology's been around on the micro level for a long time, but they're trying to scale it up and do more. It's fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating what could be done with it. A foray into geothermal bankrupted the utility at King Salmon and Naknek. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, there's a whole new thing here. The EPA will stop geothermal in its tracks. The amount of red tape you have to navigate to set up a functional geothermal generator is crazy. I didn't know. Psilocybins have better reported outcomes than SSRIs. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole thing about psilocybins. Their Reason Magazine actually had an article about it the other day saying that there are new studies that microdosing with some of that stuff can lead to better outcomes in mental health than some of the medications that they're using right now, especially for depression and some other things. I mean, it's amazing what God put on this planet for us to be able to use in small, certain doses, right? There was a company that was hawking low-temp geothermal here about 10 to 12 years ago. They swore to be damned they could make it work on Shemia. I mean, that's the thing. There's, if somebody can actually develop something like that works well, it could be a godsend. But how many hucksters are out there? We just don't know. Anthony says, I'll take poor mental health. I'm not down for eating anything that grows off of cow turds. Come on. Mushrooms are delicious. And I don't mean psilocybin. I'm just like, mushrooms are amazing. Yes, I know they grow out of, but mushrooms are delicious. And it doesn't matter. And if there's health benefits to it, I'm okay with that as well. If there's some kind of things where it can improve your mental health, I'm not against looking into that. But let's talk with somebody who knows something about the mental health here in Alaska, because we were doing a lot of speculating last week, and I had a couple people tell me that I needed to talk to Julie. So let's bring Rep Julie Coulombe here on the program this morning to talk about it. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. How are you doing?
It's Fun Day Monday, and there's nothing. I see a big chunk of blue sky outside the crack in my drapes here.
Not in Anchorage.
Not in Anchorage? No. I'm in Wasilla, so this is why everybody should live in Wasilla, because it's just God's country here. It's just beautiful. So I want to talk a little bit about this, because especially in light of all the crazy things that have been happening, the whole thing in Wasilla this weekend where the naked lady was running around the parking lot attacking people, and it took 6 officers to bring her down. According to Facebook and some of the people there, said, oh, this is this gal, and she's had a slew of mental health issues and challenges. And, we saw what happened at the Lusac Library with the stabbing. We see with things at Fairbanks. I mean, it's being reported all over the state, and it's like a rash of these incidents where people are they just snap. They're gone. They have a continuing public health crisis. And of course, things like homelessness and everything else. So we're going to get into that before I go too far along here. But your audio's good. Your video's good. Another beautiful day, and we're ready to dive into this. So if you're ready, give me about 2 minutes and we'll be right back to you. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, good. So Representative Julie Coulombe is going to be joining us here in just a minute. Okay. I love so I'll take that. Can't have caffeine. My heart speeds up. Brian says he could not make the numbers work on the geothermal. There you go. I'd argue that if you're eating fungus off of cow poop, your mental health is already off center. But you know that he's just being difficult. Mushrooms are delicious. I will eat mushrooms. Ooh, mushrooms in butter and garlic, a little bit of mushrooms on top of a steak or inside of a delicious omelet. Oh man, mushrooms with Swiss on an omelet. So good. Even like a portobello burger. Have you ever done that? Had a portobello mushroom top that you cooked it and seared it and ate it like a burger? Delicious. Delicious. Yeah, I know it's fungus. I'm going to eat it still. I love it. Hey, the best. That's right. I forgot. It wasn't from monkeys. It's elephants, Bill. The best coffee in the world is from beans that monkeys ate, then pooed out. It's not monkeys. It's elephants. But yes, there's ones where they feed the beans to the elephants and they digest them. And then they got to pick through the poo that stuff's like $5,000 a pound for this coffee. I mean, not really my thing. I'd still have a mushroom before I'd eat that, but there you go. The cow poop is sterile. It's turned into dirt. It's like trying to tell my wife, pee is sterile. It's fine. Don't worry about it. We had this argument one day about this, and I'm like, well, technically it's sterile. And she's like, so, you got boys, you got little boys, and you're trying to teach them to aim, right? The thing. And I'm just like, it's okay. They can clean it up. Pee is sterile. No big deal. Oh, don't say that to her. That was like the nuclear reaction. All right, here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning. It's Monday. And before we jump into it with our guest, Julie Coulombe, Representative Julie Coulombe, quick reminder, I made the announcement early this morning, and I'll make it again today, right now, in fact, that on Friday, we will have alternate programming. On Friday, I'm taking a 3-day weekend. It's my birthday. And I talked to my boss and I looked in the mirror and I said, you're a real jerk, but I want this day off. And he's grudgingly said, okay. So getting Friday off and, so it'll be a 3-day weekend. So you'll have alternate programming on Friday, which also means that on Thursday, we'll be doing firearms stuff. So it'll be Firearms Thursday. Doesn't sound nearly as good as Firearms Friday, but there you go. That's what it is. Okay. So that. Also, don't forget to check out the Common Sense Corps. If you want to help support the show, you can go to michaeldukeshow.com and click on Join the Corps. You can become part of the Facebook group and et cetera, et cetera. It's a whole thing. It's the Cool Kids Club. There you go. All right. So Representative Julie Coulombe is joining us this morning, partially because last week we got on this talk about mental health as a component of many different things, but specifically we were talking about mental health with the homelessness issue, also around firearms. We talked about that a little bit. And of course, some of the crazy things that have been happening around the state and around the nation, where we're seeing more and more of these kind of crazy antics and things happening where people are, stripping naked in the parking lots or running around, attacking people and some of this other things. And so we got into this deeper discussion about mental health and some of the problems and why we appear to be having a crisis here in America on it. And I was told by a couple people that Representative Julie Coulombe is knowledgeable on this topic with the state. And so we thought we'd bring her on board to talk about it and discuss it with us. And she joins us right now. Good morning there, Representative. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. I'm doing well. And you?
Good. You know what? It's Monday, which is kind of its own separate kind of hell usually, but we're above ground. I see some blue sky. Maybe nobody else in the state does, but I can see some blue sky. I feel good about it. And it's a 4-day work week for me. What more could I
Right.
ask for?
Well, happy
And
birthday, pre-birthday.
yeah, pre-birthday. It's a week from Wednesday is my birthday. I'm going to be working on my birthday, but I thought, you know what? Because I hate having a birthday in the middle of the week, don't you? It's like
Mhm.
either make it a Monday or a Friday. Don't make it on a Saturday and a Sunday because those days are already weekends, right? No, give me a Friday or a Saturday, something like that. So anyway, yeah, so it's going to be fun. So Julie, here's the situation. We got into this deep discussion about the problem with mental health in America. If somebody says to me, we start talking about things like gun violence and some of these acts that have gone on across the country. You could trace some of the rise of some of these things back to the mid 80s when the Reagan administration kind of dismantled the entire mental health care system in the country. And in some cases some states had a plan for afterwards. Some places didn't, but we could see there's this cumulative effect over the last 50 years that has caused some real problems. And it goes back again to talking about things like the homelessness or some of these actions. And here in Alaska, we've got a couple different things that deal with this, including the Mental Health Trust and some other things. But it seems like we're having kind of a real mental health crisis as far as the medical care for mental health crisis is amongst the population, not just in Alaska, but across the country. So give us your thoughts on what you're seeing here to begin with before we get into some of the specifics.
Yeah, so I'd just start out with last year there was a report that 43% of Alaskans said that they had mental health issues, and only 26% could have had access to get help. And so obviously there's a big gap. But there has been in Alaska for a long time. I think the pressure now, in my opinion, part of the pressure is coming from social media. I know for young people, the suicide rates have just skyrocketed, and that is not helping. But there's been a long standing issue with mental health in Alaska. And I can give you a little history lesson about that. But just, I
Sure.
wanted to let people know that I have a personal experience with this. And this is why I'm no expert, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but my husband and I adopted our third son out of the foster care system at age 5. And so he is the classic case that they talk about so much, is that he went from foster home to foster home to foster home, had lots of trauma, lots of abuse. And by the time we got him, there was so much damage that it was hard to climb out of. We looked for help. This was 20 years ago. Um, we did get one psychologist, didn't do much. They just wanted to put him on meds. He ended up in North Star. He ended up down in Lower 48 in behavioral health centers. It was just a mess. And back then, I think it was about 2010, the state did a bring the kids home, and they had thousands of children that had been moved out of state because there's no services here for behavioral health. And so since then, I, you know, I think with so much that's the pressures of society going on right now, whether it's COVID, inflation, social media, I think it's all just kind of coming to a head, and it's really just revealing that we don't have the services that we're supposed to have anyway.
No, and that's exactly it. Now, look, I want to be clear here because I've talked about this several times. There used to be a mental health system across the country. The states had a variety of mental health homes, asylums, for involuntary commitment and things like that.
Right.
And there were some horrific things that went on at these. I mean, there were some exposés in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s where they talked about some of the horrific conditions. And I'm not trying to defend those positions. There were some horrible
Mhm.
things, but it also had there were still some good places in those kind of situations where it took some of these people who couldn't care for themselves, who were so damaged that they just could not participate in society, and it took them off the street and helped deal with them and help care for them and things like that. And once a lot of those systems shut down, many states had no further plan as to what to do, and those people basically ended up out in the wild. And
Right.
that's kind of what we're looking at today, without the lack of, I mean, mental health is a serious issue. I mean, I've got mental health issues in my family. People would argue that I have mental health issues, but I mean, I'm familiar with what's going on out there. And you're right, there is a complete lack of, there's just a lack of it being able to do it. They don't have enough beds to do a lot of this stuff. And you're talking about all the kids and everything else. And then you add the pressures of, the workaday world and COVID and all this other kind of stuff that has driven a lot of people, even nuttier, plus the divisiveness of politics. And I mean, it's just this culmination of things. Give us a little bit of history. As you were saying, you were going to give us a bit of a history with it here. Give us the rundown on this.
Yeah, so Alaska was a little bit different. So in the territory days, there really wasn't mental health facilities here. So the feds would send everybody to a place called Morningside Hospital in Oregon. And so thousands of people were going down there. And in 1956, they passed the Mental Health Trust Enabling Act. And that act actually gave the territory responsibility for mental health services. So they gave Alaska 1 million acres as a trust to fund mental health services. That's also when API, Alaska Psychiatric Institute, was built. I think it was built like for $6 million or something. So there were some services started, and then with the million acres that they gave, they're supposed to be obviously generating income to help with mental health services and bring people back to Alaska. 1984 Weiss versus Alaska decision. This was a father that sued the state because he had a son and had to be sent out of state because there was no services here. That's when the Mental Health Trust was established. So originally they gave 1 million acres, but the state did not manage it. They sold it. They really didn't use it for what it was intended to. So 500,000 of those acres were still left. And then the court gave another 500,000 acres of land and $200 million in cash. And so that's what established the Mental Health Trust. And the Mental Health Trust is the only trust in the country that generates funds to help with mental health in the state. The trust is supposed to have its permanent fund. The Permanent Fund Corporation and DNR are supposed to be managing their lands and their money. And for the most part, that's what's happened. So the trust is a really key part of providing mental health in Alaska. It's not that the state, like Department of Health, still has responsibility to do that, but the trust establishes the budget in a lot of ways for the mental health. And they obviously, they kind of a unique, they run kind of like a foundation. So they're unique in that they can spend money without the legislature, approving every single thing.
Right.
But we do approve the mental health budget, and that has a lot of what we call MTARs in the budget line. It'll say MTAR. That's where the Mental Health Trust gives money to state departments to help run mental health in the state. And so it's really unique. It's complicated for a lot of people because of the weird relationship with the legislature that we do approve. And we do approve the board members, but they have a lot of free reign on what they spend their money on and how they invest their money. So for me, I was aware of the Mental Health Trust before I even got in the legislature, and I've been a little frustrated with their inability to really move the needle on any mental health issue in Alaska. So that's why I probably know a little more than I definitely knew more than most legislators, and I was trying to educate the legislators on how the mental health trust interacted with the Department of Health, and trying to make sure we're using the resources the best, in an effective way. Because right now, when you look at the key point indicators, we're failing. We're failing on every mental health level, right? So
Yeah. Well, and API is, I mean, they have a lack of beds, and there's no, there's not enough. There's not enough there. There's no long-term care facility for people who, who have again this problem with the guy at the Lusac Library. He'd attacked several people, gone to court. They basically said he wasn't fit to stand trial. They release him back out onto the street. I mean, they got violent people running, going back out onto the street. And so the question is, do we need to rethink how we're doing it here in Alaska and find a place where we can put people who need to be adjudicated and put in the system and do things like that? Do we need to be looking at a whole new way of doing things?
Well, I mean, that's why this is one of my passion projects, so to speak, in Juneau, because the scorecard that the Mental Health Trust puts out, it's obvious that we're failing. So API especially is something I followed for years, and you probably know some of the drama through since the Dunleavy administration. The API, this last budget, we spent $26 million on API. It's supposed to have a capacity of 80 beds. The last time I checked, we have a capacity of 55, which, to the governor's administration's credit, it used to be about 20. They've had all sorts of management problems, and as far as youth beds, it's like 10 of those beds are for youth, and so it's obviously 55 beds for the entire state of Alaska is not enough. The other issue with that is not only the management of API, but something we talked about in Juneau a lot, because there was a bill, was the idea of involuntary commitment. So there was a court case not too long ago saying you can't force someone to take meds, and you can't force someone to be institutionalized. And so it's balancing the public safety aspect of things and individual rights. It's not an easy thing to solve. That bill, the gal that was stabbed was in Juneau a lot. She talked to all of us. She was there all the time pushing for this, and we all agreed with her, that this was so wrong. But we have to balance the rights of the individual, like I said, with public safety. And so that's been taking some time. It's still, right now, I think it's in Representative Vance's Judiciary Committee. And it needs to be hashed out, because if we don't do it right, it'll just be court challenged and we won't get anywhere anyway. So
Julie Coulombe is our guest, representative from Anchorage. We're talking about mental health here in the state of Alaska. We're going to continue this discussion in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Julie, I mean, I don't want to go too far afield because we'll have to repeat ourselves on the radio. Mm-hmm. This gal, though, coming down to Juneau, and I heard that she was making the rounds down there. Mm-hmm. That had to be pretty powerful. I mean, this woman is paralyzed, right? I mean, she's paralyzed from the waist down. No rehabilitation possible, from what I read or understood. Her life obviously totally changed by some random stranger who just went crazy and decided that he needed to stab her. And I mean, that must have been some powerful discussions, a powerful testimony on that.
Oh yeah, it's a lesson in a constituent can really turn the ship, because her presence in the building and her like personally meeting each one of us, some of us several times, really made sure that we were putting the pressure on that bill to not only pass it through, but to vet it well and get it through. I think it has support in the Senate. It has support in the House. I think we're just trying to make sure that it's the best bill that we can produce. Like I said, so it doesn't just hit a court challenge the minute it gets passed. And so it's she's sitting in front of me.
Yep.
And this is a clear loophole problem. That's
Yeah,
our
because
job. That's
because as I've pointed out several times, this guy had been in and out of the system. He had and it wasn't his first act of violence. This was the most egregious one, but it wasn't his first act of violence. He had attacked other people and
Mhm.
been deemed not fit to stand trial. And so
Right.
the answer is release him, which I mean, so I know people, their eyebrows just, when you start talking about this, their eyebrows just go up because they mean, wait, he did acts of violence, he did this, but he's not fit to stand trial. And so you just release him back out onto the street.
Mhm.
And that's what has blown a lot of people's minds, because there is no mental incarceration. There is no, you're going upstate to a farm or to a place that they'll take care of you because he just wasn't. I mean, how does that happen? How do
Yeah.
you let people who are violent back out on the street because we have no other, because the law says he's not fit to stand trial? But if he's not fit to stand trial and he's a danger to society, what do you do with him?
Mhm. Well, apparently we let him go. Like
Yeah.
that's what we need to fix. But it does require an involuntary commitment. And so that's why it's tricky. And we have there's some legislators that are lawyers that I've been working with a lot. So we get all the loose ends tied up, but we don't go too far. And obviously, this is a public safety issue. If you've been in Anchorage lately, the homeless problem is, especially down on Third, is just blown up.
What's
And
that?
I would say, I can't remember. I want to say it was like 40%, maybe 35% of the people are actively homeless in Anchorage have mental health problems. So we don't know if they're dangerous or not. But they're definitely not able to take care of themselves. And so what do we do? If we can't commit them involuntarily, it's a hard situation. And it's sad too.
It
I
is
hate to
sad.
see him on the street. I mean, my first exposure to mental health facilities was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right? So
Right, right.
we don't need
Well,
Nurse Ratchets and stuff. So, but that was, the thing that happened with Reagan. Geez, that was 50 years ago. So, I mean, we need to, maybe that's not the answer, but I think there are some solutions coming our way
no.
that I can talk about when we get on the air. But um,
Exactly. I mean, look at the explosion of homelessness and a lot of these other issues since the shutdown of that system. Again, that system was deeply flawed in many ways. I mean, we
Mhm.
saw some horrendous conditions. We saw some horrific things happen. But the bottom line is that leaving us with basically no system in place has obviously had consequences now for 50 years.
Yeah.
And we're seeing more homelessness and more issues and more than ever before. So let's talk about this, and we'll talk about some solutions here from your perspective and more. Julie Coulombe, our guest, the Michael Duke Show. Please like and share, like and follow, like and do all the stuff that you need to on YouTube and Facebook and everything else. Let's continue on. Here we go, jumping right back in right now.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
What? I've never been called. Never said that before. I'm not a pain for anybody. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio, hour 2 of the broadcast. We're talking with Representative Julie Coulombe about mental health in the United States. And, well, in Alaska specifically, but this is a problem that affects all of the United States. Julie, you were just talking about this bill involuntary commitment bill. So explain to me now, what does Alaska have for, and we keep coming back to this one because it's the most egregious example that I can think of recently, is this man stabbing this woman in the Lusac library who was known to police, had been in and out, had been deemed not fit to stand trial, released back into the streets, over and over and over again, to now he's really hurt somebody. What, let's talk about the involuntary commitment laws as they stand today versus what this bill would do. So what do we have on the books today? Is there really anything? How do we get somebody adjudicated to where they need to be into state care versus, what does the bill do? So give me the differences here for where we are now and where we could be.
Well, I'm not aware of any situation where you can commit someone involuntarily long term. So if someone's having a mental health crisis, they can be committed. I think it's 36 hours to basically calm down. But a lot of those people land in the emergency room, and or in prison, or in a detox, or like a dry out cell. But there really isn't a place long term to put someone, and the law does not support involuntary commitment. That story, I think it was out in the valley, that woman who got pulled in by her family and involuntary committed.
The teacher,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
The
yeah.
teacher who did that,
I mean, that was a little bit different situation, but you can't do that. And so right now, the big push is what's called Crisis Now, and they're building Crisis Now Stabilization Center at Prov. I believe there's one in Wasilla, maybe one in Fairbanks. But this whole idea of putting someone for a short term to calm them down and connect them with services, that's helping. It's supposed to help, and I think it does help pull people out of the ER or a cell, or where we don't have anywhere to put them. Now they have a place to put someone, connect them to services, let them calm down. And I think for the police and firemen, it's helpful because right now they're having mental health professionals. And I had a lot of publicity, I think, last year, where mental health professionals would go to crisis situations, and people
Right.
were really worried because, is it a violent situation? Why are these mental health professionals going into scary situations? But what's happened is, so let's say a family member's having a mental health crisis. They call 911. They say, I have someone, they're threatening to kill themselves. I don't know what to do. They're freaking out. 911 will farm that to a mental health. They actually transfer it to a mental health professional, and the mental health professional will try to talk the situation down over the phone. If that's not happening, they actually dispatch mental health professionals. And if there's obviously, if there's a weapon or if there's a violent situation, they'll have police officers with them to try to deal with it as a mental health situation instead of a criminal situation, which
Right,
is
right.
basically what's been happening. So you have someone who's trying to kill themselves, they send the SWAT team and they surround the house, and then the person ends up killing themselves. So it's not the best way to deal with a mental health crisis. So right now, Crisis Now is the big thing. Everybody's pushing for that. It doesn't help with involuntary commitment. It doesn't help with long-term solutions. I think that's a different bucket than Crisis Now. But I know the Mental Health Trust has really been has helped a lot with trying to get Crisis Now in the state, because it's in the lower 48, it's been working. And I would say right now it's been working as far as first responders. It's helping them a lot to pull some of those situations away from them.
De-escalated, down to a
Yeah.
mental health issue instead of a criminal issue, which I think is
Well, I mean, the police, the police are not known for de-escalation, not because they're doing anything wrong, but when you see a bunch of cop cars come out, they're all armed. Everybody's intimidated. Everybody's afraid. Just their presence can escalate a situation. So they're trying to pull that off and bring things down so it doesn't get to that point where, you have the house surrounded and,
Right. How would
this.
this new bill change the law? This bill that's again is in Sarah Vance's committee. I know it raised a few eyebrows. Some
Mhm.
people were concerned about it, when it came through. But how would it help? What would it change? Would it create a process for involuntary commitment, or is that what it's really about, or what
Mhm.
does the bill cover?
Yeah, so I'm not really good on the specifics of the bill, but my understanding of the bill is that it's going to close that loophole for violent mental health patients. So right now they're not able to. It's really a Department of Law issue where they can't, if they're not fit for trial, they can't commit them anyway. They can't put them in jail because they haven't been convicted of anything. And so this weird gap of you can't make them go into a mental institution and you can't put them in jail. And so it closes that where there's certain conditions. It's very specific. It's been amended a lot. It's a very small window where they can commit them. I think it's up to 5 years. It got amended in the Senate. It was higher. They can but actually it started with 5 years, and I think you can commit them up to 2 years with a re-up. So a reevaluation every 2 years. You can keep them there up to 5 years. So they didn't start that way, but I think because people were really concerned about the just involuntary commitment and how that could get abused, they made it a very specific window, especially to the situation, the gal that was stabbed in the library. It would help that situation where get them off the streets. Yes, they're committed involuntarily, but not forever. It's not going to be you're in the mental institution for the rest of your
Right.
life. You're being reevaluated constantly
But
to see where they're at.
that leads to the problem, of course, is where do you put them? I mean, is there a
Right,
facility? I mean, you could put them in
right.
jail, and jails have, the mental wards, or the, psych wards or whatever. But I mean, do you put them in jail, or is there a facility to actually, like a state mental health
Mhm.
facility where they can go? And as you point out, only 55 beds for a state of 700,000 people.
Right.
Probably not enough when they're reporting that at least 40,000 or 40% of people have some kind of issue, but I mean, so do we need more facilities then? Is that where mental health trust comes in? Do we build more facilities? Do they fund something like that? How does that work?
Yeah, so that was a big conversation in Juneau is where, and I'll give kudos to Representative Prox for pointing this out over and over, like where are we putting these people? There's a lot of discussion about an extension to API. The API would need more beds. They would need more employees to handle that. I didn't hear a lot of like brand new facilities. I would support expanding API if we could fix the management problems that are there. It's gotten better, but it's still an issue. But I think that's probably the most likely scenario to expand services to API. So that does go back to the mental health trust. The mental health trust has so I guess where I sometimes get at odds with the trust is that I would like to see more money put in infrastructure. My biggest thing, and a lot of this is my own son's experience. There is
Sure.
no open door drug treatment center in Anchorage. You can't just decide I'm done. I want to go in. There are lots of little treatment centers all over Anchorage, and the trust has land and they have $700 million, well, $800 million plus. It's actually almost $1 billion in investments in land. And I would like to see, instead of spreading out their money on these, small grants all over the state, like let's build something. And there will probably have to be um, involved in expanding API. I just don't know of anybody else who has the resources to help with that
Right.
kind of project.
Well, the
So,
grants are fine. I mean, grants are fine. That's all good. But
right,
like you said, you have to have the infrastructure to be able
right.
to actually house the people to begin with.
Right.
And while Juneau is fine, and that's great that, API and everything, but I mean, you got the vast majority of the people who are here on the road system. And of course, the majority of the state lives within 100 miles of Anchorage and everything
Right.
else. Why don't we have a facility there that's an actual facility, not hard security, but a soft security place where they can go, they can be safe, they can be kept there, they can't leave, they're safe, this society's safe, everything
Right.
else. Why wouldn't they invest $100 million of that money to build the facility and then, spin off money every year to maintain it? Why wouldn't that? Seems like that would be a great use of that mental health trust money. If they've
Mhm.
got almost $1 billion, you can build a pretty damn good facility for 50 or $60 million, I'm assuming, and then keep it and then upkeep it and then have the state partially fund it and everything else. That seems to be a better solution than just throwing little bits of money at various different things.
Well, so yeah, there's a little bit of a challenge with that because the mental health trust only has a 4.25% draw every year. So they're giving out 20 million a year. And so I don't that to put that kind of money into a capital project would be it would take a lot of pressure and negotiations to try to get more money out. But look, if you so when you saw if you saw mental health trust present at the Senate Finance Committee, no one talked about mental health at all, except for David Wilson, who asked about Alzheimer's support. All it was their financial condition, which okay, it's finance. So that could be the focus. But the problem is their focus is to make money. They're making a lot of money and good for them. I'm glad that they're doing that. They're not doing what happened in the past where they're just wasting their land or selling or whatever.
Right,
So
right.
they manage it well, but my issue is where is the health and the mental health component? Like you're making money so you can support mental health. And right now, one of the things that I brought up in committee that's always kind of irked me is their operating costs is about $8.3 million. Yeah, $8.3 million to operate the mental health trust in the land office. They gave the state 8.5 million to support mental health. So their operating costs are almost even with what they give state departments to help with mental health. Now, to
Yeah,
me,
that
you
seems a
know,
little exorbitant. I mean, at that point.
well, that's fine if you want to spend that much money on operating costs, but the balance isn't there. So, and to be fair, they give the rest of the money, they gave about 20 million. So we have another 9, 10, 12 million that went to grants throughout the state in
Right.
crisis now. It's not that they're only giving 8.5, but that is a pretty heavy operating cost when you're only giving out 20 total anyway. So I have asked them about the draw. Why is it they do a 4.25% draw, which is less than permanent fund, plus they inflation proof, plus they have reserves. Plus,
Right.
they're developing their land. So what I would like to see, and back to API, is what if we did have a large capital project that the state really couldn't cover? I would love to see the trust kick in and do what they need to do to get some infrastructure in Alaska. And I'll
Well,
talk about it next segment, but there's a pressure there. There's a federal pressure that we may have to figure it out.
yeah, because we're feeling it on some of the federal regs as well. There, we're not
Mhm.
we're not earning any friends at the federal level
No.
with some of the things we're doing as well. We'll continue with this in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense, Liberty Base, Free Thinking Radio. Julie Coulombe, our guest. We return right after this.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend. Michael Duke Show.
30% overhead, essentially, is what you're saying. You're saying 20 million. It costs them 8 million to give 20 million away. That that does seem excessive just from the outside. I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers or anything, but it seems like that's a pretty excessive number almost 30%, 28 or whatever that is, to in overhead to give away.
Mhm.
But it would seem to make sense if they've got $1 billion, nearly $1 billion in their own fund, why they wouldn't build one facility and then utilize a big chunk of that yearly spinoff instead of giving it in a lot of separate little grants, instead to fund and to maintain facilities that they themselves can build. That seems like a pretty good deal. I mean, it seems like a pretty good idea, but obviously
Well, part of it
there's
is, part of it is, for the settlement and statute, they're the people they serve, they're called trustees. It's about a third of the population in Alaska. People with dementia, drug addiction, mental health, behavioral health issues. It's kind of broad. And so, that's when you look at their plans, it's a really broad plan, and I understand why they get spread thin. But my request is just that there's priorities. Don't cut out all the money for dementia and Alzheimer's and traumatic brain injuries. But obviously, we have a suicide crisis and a drug addiction crisis. So I would prefer the resources be prioritized
right.
as the problems are right now. And right now, it's kind of evenly spread and actually a little wonky on some things. Like they're spending a lot of money on homelessness, not so much on juvenile behavioral health. So
Yeah.
there's just some priorities that I would like to see changed. And like I said, when we get back on, there's a DOJ report that's going to make us do
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Um, I was just saying, Jeannie says, can she read the comments? Yes, she can read the comments if she has time to read the
Oh,
comments. She can read the comments that are in the
yeah.
in the
Oh,
thing there. Um, I'm just looking to
there
see.
it is. Okay, sorry. I
No,
had
no,
it on private chat,
no,
so
no, that's fine. You can see there's a whole bunch of comments in there
oh, okay, I see
about
it.
some of this. Use a central facility with hospitals as intermediaries. Jeannie also talked a lot about some of the legislators need to take a tour of the Western state hospitals in Hawks Prairie in Olympia. I know that both California and Washington have got large state-run mental health. I know California specifically has one outside of Ojai. No, maybe it's not Ojai. Anyway, they have it's like a campus. It's like a college campus, but it's basically a state facility for people who have, mental disabilities or deformities, or, who can't survive on their own in society. They
Mhm.
have that, as well. There are other states who, after the disbandment of the whole system, did pick it up on their own and have been doing better than many others. But yeah, it's a real problem. She also said, read something. Where was that? I was looking at that. There was a comment where, here we go. Do everyone a favor, procure a copy of Washington State's Involuntary Treatment Act. Read it. It may not apply to Alaska's needs, but the theory is viable and successful.
I
So
will.
yeah, maybe we'll do that. Anyway, yeah, there's a bunch of comments in there too. Some of them
Yeah, I'm
have
looking at them now.
some of
Yeah,
them no binding on what we're talking about here, but there you go. That's what happens
I
sometimes.
was like, Venezuelan? Okay.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. But Brian does have a point. There's a lot of money in the Alaska study industry. There's money to be made helping Alaskans manage money. We talk about the study of the study that we studied before to study the study that we studied the third time. And, that's the running joke about the Alaska study industry, that we have that pretty
Yes.
much everywhere. But
Well,
yeah,
I said that in both Representative Rutledge and I mentioned that in the education subcommittee, because we're spending so much money on analysis and study of students, and we're just like, stop. Like we need to do. We know the problems. Like
right. We
we
call
need
that analysis
to
paralysis.
do.
Yeah.
Analysis.
Call that analysis paralysis. We're just studying the problem. We're stuck in a squat, baked in a
I
squat,
know.
studying the problem.
True.
That's a real thing here in Alaska. I mean, the millions of dollars made on studies every year. There's probably a whole wing of the Library of Congress that could be filled with the studies that we've had in the past that but we've got to restudy them now, kind of thing.
Well, I would say, out of my limited experience in Juneau, education, mental health have the most studies I've ever seen. I have binders and binders of every study, and just in the last like 5 years, so many studies. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's a lot of money too. It's expensive.
All right. Well, we're going to get back into solutions. This is the final segment. Representative Julie Coulombe is our guest. Let's get into it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like and share, like and follow, do the stuff, join the Common Sense Corps. Here we go. All right, ready to continue. Final segment. Julie Coulombe, our guest representative from Anchorage. We've been talking about mental health. We've been talking about the trust. If you got $1 billion, why can't you just build a facility and maintain it where Alaskans can get what they need? But she's got some potential discussions and solutions here, maybe things that could be done. Julie, final segment. What's your thought? I'll give you free reign here to talk about, what you think could be done here. Give us your rundown.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to be sure to talk about, Michael, was the Department of Justice report that came out in December of last year. That report said that we are on the cusp of the feds suing us because we do not provide services for our adolescents and our youth. This is the reason why the trust was established in the 80s. We're in the same situation than we were in the 80s. We don't have enough community-based services to help people keep their kids with them or in limited treatment. We're still sending kids out of state. We're sending kids to North Star, who is having a lot of management problems as well. And so with that pressure, they created a DOJ steering committee, which I'm on, and which they're analyzing the situation right now. Hopefully it moves into action.
They're studying the study, right? Exactly.
But the good news is, I think maybe, I'm no fan of the feds, but it's giving a lot of pressure to action instead of talking about stuff. We have to do something or we're going to be sued again by the feds because we're not fulfilling, because we have Medicaid. We're not fulfilling the services that we're supposed to. And we're still sending kids out of state, just like my son 20 years ago. And so one of the solutions that I think is encouraging is that they got what's called an 1115 waiver. That was right before COVID. It was 2019, I think. And that is a Medicaid covering behavioral health services. So that was a big deal for the state. Then we had COVID, and it really kind of it interrupted its implementation. And so now it's starting to come back. People are understanding how to apply for the waivers and trying to connect that with the mental health providers. But so the DOJ report really focuses on you can't institutionalize your children unless it's a very extreme case. And so what the 1115 waivers do is try to put behavioral health services within the community, because once you take the kids out of the home and out of state, like my son, it was a disaster. It's way too much trauma. He couldn't live in our house, but I think if we had some wraparound services that helped us manage him, he could have at least been in a small group home in Anchorage. And so we would see him and we would, keep our relationship and their safety. So the 1115 waiver is a big deal. It's a linchpin in a lot of areas. The problem is in the rural areas, there isn't that many services, and the rural areas have plenty of mental health problems. So they're being sent to Anchorage, which means they're out of the community. They're especially Native children. They're out of their culture. They're away from their family. And so that's the steering committee that I'm on is trying to figure out, is basically putting a framework together to make sure that not only the hubs have the wraparound services, but that there's some answers to some of the rural areas to try to get kids to stay in their community and get help. It depends on what their issues are. A lot of my son's issues were related to trauma. He was a FAS kid, a fetal alcohol syndrome kid. And so they have lots, like there's a whole specialty to help deal with FAS kids. Some of their behaviors will never get fixed. What you're trying to do is help them cope with some of the issues they have and help their family understand why they act the way they do. So this last year, we had a $231 million mental health budget. I voted no. I think it was just me and David Eastman that voted no on the final budget, mainly because there was amendments from the Senate that I wasn't aware of. And I hate that the mental health budget is just kind of moved along in committee. It's not vetted like the operating and the capital budget. Well, the capital budget wasn't vetted this year, but generally the capital budget.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to try to do this coming year is try to connect the mental health budget with the key pointing indicators and make sure that state's money is being spent on things that actually work, that actually do something to provide services, not only for the youth, because we need to do that, especially not only for our youth, but the feds, but for everyone. We can't, it just astonishes me that we're back to where the mental health trust was actually formed, that we're sending kids and people out of state because we still don't have services. So
Right. With $1 billion in the bank. That's the thing.
Right.
So just mind blowing.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about government solutions to this, but as a libertarian, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, where does the private sector stand in this? I mean, what are some of the solutions the private sector could do, or what are some of the opportunities there?
So there's I would like to see some private sector providers come up, and I feel like the mental health trust could help with that to like, let's say we build something, we need a provider to come and run that. Maybe the government helps with the initial capital, but then a private provider can come up and run it. We right now, the only private providers that I know of, that aren't nonprofits, are faith-based providers. We have Set Free Alaska, like they're scattered and mainly in the valley, actually, a lot more in the valley than in Anchorage. And they're smaller, they're faith-based, their numbers are better as far as recidivism. And, I don't. I think a private provider needs to know that they are going to come here and they have the human resources to make the program run, and that's an issue. We struggle with that, and that's a whole nother conversation about UAA and and the university and stuff. But that is kind of a block for some providers that if they come up here, they can't hire enough qualified people to run their program, and to bring them up with them would be expensive. And so, that's another piece to this, is the actual provider piece. You got the infrastructure, the provider piece, and then the law, like, the involuntary commitment versus voluntary commitment. So there's a couple of pieces that need to be put together to really help move things forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that if the state was to build the infrastructure and then private industry was to come in and take over that infrastructure and run it, that might be the best of the combination. Right. Because nobody's going to, no doctor is going to come up and try and invest $100 million in something like that and then not know what's going to happen. I think there has to be some stability in that. I mean, it's a problem that reaches into many aspects of our lives. We're obviously not solving it right here, but we're at least coming up with some of the solutions. Representative Julie Coulombe, thank you so much for coming on board and joining us this morning. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your thoughts.
I appreciate it.
All right, hold the line for a second. folks, we're out of time for today. Tomorrow, Brad Keithley, Chris Story. Wednesday, fingers crossed, Mike Shower. Thursday, some firearm stuff. Should be fun. We will continue. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. See ya. All right, Julie. I see you got some sunshine now.
The sun just came through the window. I was like, what happened?
I say the sun shining on your face. I can see it happening now. So final thoughts. I'll give you the final bite at the apple here, because again, this is a very complex issue. And it ties into so many other issues.
Yeah.
In America, not just in Alaska, but in America. I mean, and again, we can have the discussion about, gun violence and child crime and a lot of these other things. We could talk about homelessness. It all, I think, comes back to roost on mental health in many ways. And so I'll give you the chance here, your final thoughts on all this here.
Yeah. So if you look at the statistics in the correctional centers, in the addiction centers, mental health centers, almost half are former foster care kids. Okay, so there's a long streaming issue going on. The foster care system is broken. They come out of that broken. We treat them by sending them away from their family and their culture. And so I'm just like I'm trying to figure out a way where we can actually get action items, whether it's the mental health trust or the health department or private providers. We have to actually get the services to these people and to look at the foster care system, because a lot of that pipeline they talk about to corrections it's really true, and it's really sad. My son is a victim of the system as well. We tried so hard to try to get him help, try to get him stable, but if you don't have the expert help around, whether it's private or not, you kind of like my husband and I are no experts on we're not psychologists. So we needed the assistance to try to understand his condition. And so that's what I'm going to be trying to do to Juneau. We got to connect the money to the key point indicators. Is the money being spent working? And if it's not working, what are we going to do about it? We got to shift. We got to either change priorities or change the game plan.
And I guess kudos to the Mental Health Trust for building the trust up.
Yeah.
But there comes a time when you have to expend a portion of it now I can understand being cautious in the 4.25 draw, but you're upwards of now $1 billion. And if you're only distributing $20 million a year out of that billion, it's just going to continue to grow,
right?
Because and not help the problem. I mean, great that you have the money, but again, that infrastructure would be worth much more than the money in the bank. That infrastructure that would help Alaskans today. So again, spin off $100 million and build a facility or two in the country. Go partner with private individuals, partner with private providers, get them in there, set up a fund where it automatically, draws and maintains, does the maintenance, does all the things like that, and let everything else. That would be a much better use than the money just sitting in the bank. I mean, at that point, you're actually doing something.
Right. Well, they're encouraged to keep those investments up. Bert Stedman's so happy with how the trust is being run and how much money they're making, and they've gotten into commercial real estate. They're developing. They have a project down at Icy Bay. Yeah, they're making a lot of money. So, which again, I'm glad, because the history is, the land before was wasted and sold and spent on other things. So I'm grateful for that. But I think we're in a position now that, we're getting a lot of pressure from the feds. We got to get our act together, or else we're going to waste more money in a court lawsuit with the feds. I'd rather see that money expand API or build a treatment center in Anchorage. There's so many things that we could do that would keep people in the state and not have to be sent out to the state. So
No, Jeannie says it. I think Bert Stedman is missing the point on that. Great. I mean, I
Yeah.
agree with that. Take 10%. I don't think taking 10% and spinning it off to actually have physicality and have infrastructure would be a bad thing. And then
Right.
you'd still have 90% to run it in perpetuity. I mean,
Right.
to me, that would make sense.
yeah,
But what do I know? I'm just a radio guy. All right, Julie,
you're way too pragmatic, Michael.
way too pragmatic. I've been told that, or was it pregnant? I can't remember.
So have I.
It's one of the two. All right, Julie Coulombe, thank you so much. It's good to hear from you. Thank you for coming on board. As
Well,
always,
thank
great.
you for asking me, Michael. This is one of my passion issues, so I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you.
Well, we should talk about it. We should talk about it more, is what we should be talking about it.
Yeah.
We'll do, this is Mental Monday, I guess is what we're talking about. Mental Health Monday. All right. Thanks, Julie. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael.
Folks, we're out of time. We got more coming up tomorrow. Thanks for coming in and being part of it. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. We will see you then, folks. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.